Welcome to For Good Measure, an interview series celebrating diverse composers and other creative artists. I'm Nanette McGuinness, Artistic Executive Director of Ensemble for these times. In this week's episode, we continue our Da Capo Conversations, a mini-series where we'll be giving familiar segments a topical twist. Today we revisit Pamela Z's and Elinor Armour's perspectives on working with text as part of their artistic practice. Here's what Pamela Z had to say.
The way that I often start the process of composing a new work is to conduct a series of interviews with a large number of people who, a number of people ranging from a handful to often as many as 20 or 30 people, one at a time. I bring them into my little soundproof recording booth in my studio if I can. Otherwise, I have to just find the most clean, pristine recording environment to get the interview in. And then I will record, I'll ask them a lot of questions and I'll record the interview. And then when I've amassed a whole series of these interviews, I will, in Pro Tools, I will edit each interview to isolate and make what we used to call regions, or I think they now call them clips, of little speech fragments that will become part of the music. And those can be as long as full sentences or phrases. But more often they're just like maybe a single word or even syllables or just phonemes. And I name them so that they're searchable for me later. So I have this bin then that is full of hundreds and hundreds of these little named clips for any given project. And they'll be named things like NM, or GR, yes, I think so, And then when I'm searching those, I can pull those up and build the music from those. And then I to start assembling these little clips into tracks in Pro Tools, and they actually kind of almost look like Legos. They're like little building blocks that if you look at any of my Pro Tools sessions, they have these sort of bricks that are sort of spread along throughout the tracks that are layered and overlapping with each other. And that's how I actually compose the actual music, because these speech fragments actually become the music itself. So when I do these interviews, it's the answers that people give me are both inspiration for making the work and give me ideas for making the work, but they also are the actual material that I use to make the work. Literal material that I use to make the work. So the music is actually made out of the sound of these people's speaking voices. And then I often build the pieces by listening to those phrases and fragments for the pitches and rhythmic figures that are embedded in them. And I sort of tease out those sounds from the sounds themselves, from the speech sounds themselves. A lot of people actually think of speech as being, unpitched, but in fact, it's not, because there is no such thing as an unpitched sound, because all sounds have frequency and pitch is frequency. So if you take little passages of spoken text, you can actually find what are those pitches and what are the rhythms that are being spoken. And those could be transcribed and notated musically so that they can be played or sung by musicians. So I often find some of the material that it becomes the work through kind of transcribing the rhythms and pitches in this found text.
Here's what Elinor Armour had to say.
Well, you may remember that some time ago, you sent me the plans for the upcoming seasons, of E4TT. And one of them was to be on the theme of mothers and daughters. And I selected that one because I thought I would be able to find some poetry that I would like to set, and I'm very close to that subject. I am both a mother and a daughter. I originally, you may remember, was all wrapped up in the idea of the Persephone myth. And you and I went round and round with some poems related to that, and then somehow that got discarded. A lot of the poems were too long and thoroughgoing, and some of them rather frank in their imagery and so on. So I continued looking, and I was in the process of going through my old friend and collaborator Ursula Le Guin's poems, looking for poems to set. I'm making a memorial album of my settings of her poetry. And I remembered coming across the one that she wrote called A Song for My Daughter. And that just hit the spot, totally hit the spot. Partly because of its symmetry of generations. That particular poem, refers to her daughter first as, I believe, mother of my granddaughter or granddaughter of my mother. I can't remember which came first, but there's all kinds of verbal inversion going on there. I actually created little motives to represent daughter, granddaughter, and mother. And they of course, were invertible counterpoint, if you like, if you want to sound very fancy. And those motives worked their way into the piece, which is essentially tonal or modal. It didn't seem to me to call for any experimental harmonic, advanced harmonic, super modern ideas. And I don't think any of Ursula's work has ever been anything more than just sort of naturally tonal or almost tonal for me, and preferred by her. She has in the past mentioned some other settings of her work that she didn't like for this reason or that. And so I always tried to avoid doing those things that she didn't like, from other composers. The poem was meaningful to me because I have known Elizabeth, her daughter, for longer than I knew her. It was actually through Elizabeth that I met Ursula Le Guin. I met her at Elizabeth's wedding. And Elizabeth had been my student long ago at the San Francisco Conservatory, and a brilliant student she was. And now look at her. She's, in a very important position down at UCLA, and very highly considered and so on. But we have remained friends, of course, through all of this. And speaking of friends, I was going through other poems, sets of poems, specifically a book called Audible Dawn by an old friend of mine, Rella Lossie. And we were very good friends. She has long since passed away, but I've always loved her poetry. And I don't want to spill a bean here, but the poem that I chose by her was actually addressed to her son, but we won't tell anybody that because it works just as well to pretend that it's addressed to a daughter. So I was very happy to find that one by her, and Child Your Eyes. And the vigor of it and the spontaneity and the strength of it, in a sense, was a wonderful contrast to the more lyrical, more regular poem by Ursula. I thought they would work very well together. And I always like working with the poetry by my friends and loved ones. when I have the chance, I do it. And I'm fortunate to know or to have known many poets. So it's just all in the family, if you will.
Thank you for listening to For Good Measure's Da Capo Conversations, and a special thank you to our guests for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast by clicking on the subscribe button and support us by sharing it with your friends, posting about it on social media, and leaving us a rating and a review. To learn more about E4TT, our concert season online and in the Bay Area, or to make a tax-deductible donation, please visit us at www.e4tt.org. This podcast is made possible by grants from the California Arts Council, the San Francisco Arts Commission, Grants for the Arts, and generous donors like you. For Good Measure is produced by Nanette McGuinness and Ensemble for These Times and designed by Brennan Stokes, with special thanks to co-producer and audio engineer Stephanie M. Neumann. Remember to keep supporting equity in the arts and tune in next week for Good Measure.